Why the why is so important in our lessons. You should listen to this video if you want to get people's attention when you teach. You want non-subject experts to buy into what you will focus your lesson on. You want to build repeat clientele. Any of these reasons are good reasons to listen to this video, and just overall seeing a different way in which we can teach to get people's attention is always interesting. Now that I've sparked your interest, where does this whole idea come from? Well, after listening to Simon Sinek's TED Talk presentation on how great leaders inspire action and reading some posts on the little forum, I saw different ways that we can switch our way of presenting, which I found quite interesting. The only thing is that sometimes I found some of the proposals, which were separated in 5 steps or something else, could be a little bit lengthy, and unless you're a very skilled instructor, I found could lead to a situation that people would forget parts and it wouldn't really work so well. So I've actually kept things simple and worked a little bit on the same way as this TED Talk presentation. And essentially what I am proposing is flipping the order of our presentation. Instead of covering the why in the middle or towards the end, or sometimes some people simply forget to cover it at all, I will propose that we should cover the why at the very beginning of our explanations. So it should be why, what, how. Simon Sinek had a similar approach. However, he was really focusing on businesses such as Apple and other things like that and how they market their product. Not talking about what the product is per se, but why you want it beforehand. Just to give you guys a bit of an example here, when I say that you're not subject experts, well, being an economics professor over the years, I've been to many conference presentations where the presenter focused on what and how they're doing. This is just a picture of one of those presentations. The quality may not be that great, but essentially it's a bunch of equations, and this is a very common occurrence where they spend a lot of time going over their model and a very complex PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes they get to policy recommendations towards the end of the presentations, and sometimes they do not. And if you look at this presentation here, we're talking about climate change issues and the impact of imposing different forms of border tax adjustments and trying to see what's the impact on global warming. If you look at this, it doesn't really tell you much about that. So you may wonder, why am I talking about this unrelated topic in a snowboard teaching video? But essentially my point is that unless you're a subject expert in the specific field of that presenter or that person, it is easy for someone in the audience to quickly fade out and wonder why exactly they're sitting there and not doing something else, whether spending time on their phones, texting a friend, or working on something else, or if they're in this beautiful city, such as in this case I was in Istanbul, well, you wonder, why am I not just touring around the city? So whether we realize it or not, from an early age, regardless of what we're doing, we crave the why. Kids often ask, why this, why that, why this, why that? Well, even when we're older, we often wonder, well, why am I doing this? Is one of the big things that keeps on coming out. So I'd say that we should really make sure that we cover the why. And that even though you cover the why and the usual approach that you would cover it maybe sometimes later on in the presentation, is that even though you may follow a clear path from the point of view of another subject expert, which could be the evaluator or another instructor, if you not cover the why quickly, it'll be hard for you to keep the attention of the non-expert, in this case, the student. It may be obvious to you why a better fore and aft movement is important to enable a better grip towards the end of a turn, but it may not be to someone taking a one-off lesson. Simply put, the likelihood of you remembering something that you do not understand the use. So if I were to explain to you derivatives or complex mathematics, many of you would say, I'm not good at math, I won't remember this. Well, the main reason why you won't remember this is you just don't see any use behind it. When I take time to explain those concepts, I really focus on why these concepts are important and what they will allow us to do in the future, the reason behind it, before covering it, and that way people absorb the material way better. And the big thing when you cover the why towards the end of the presentation, if you think about these 15-minute conference presentations or you think about lessons or anything else, you may be in a situation where the student simply is not interested in learning this. And if the student is not interested in learning this, you've wasted a lot of time and they feel a little bit gypped in this transaction. So the second idea behind including the why nice and early is establishing a learning contract. So what I mean here is that you should get the people stoked on the reason of the upcoming exercises or runs from the start. Once you cover the why, you make sure that you establish some form of learning contract. And it could simply be saying, want to stop slipping out at the end of a heel side turn? Well, if you get a bit of feedback there, well, the next exercise will help us get more grip out of those turns. Will help something else. And I'd say in this process here, regardless if you have a small group or you have a private lesson, try to make sure that you get this kind of connection going on. So this might sound a little bit romantic, but look into their eyes and make sure they're sold on why. Relate it back to them. So you know how you felt, you're some chattering at the end of the heel side turn on the steep run? Yeah. Well, we will aim at removing this chatter. Are you interested? Yeah. Okay. Well, then you know that they're switched on. You know that they're understanding what is the plan that's going on here. Even though you may know the plan if you don't state it, they now know that you know. So you're getting a lot more expertise. They see you more as an expert. And from then on, you simply have to cover the what and the how, and they're just going to focus on that afterwards, and it makes it much clearer. I'd say give it a shot. Pause this video, take a second, and try to think about anything you may teach. It could be a specific maneuver, a specific student level, a specific task. You want to ride bumps, you want to improve early edging and other things like that. Well, think about that and try to spin it so that you're talking about the why first and you're establishing a nice learning contract. Because if we look back at this example here, if I go more with a what, why, how approach, I could simply say, or sometimes some people will cover the why at the end. Okay, here guys, we're going to cover the 1, 2, 3, 4 turns. How does this work? Well, we're going to put a bit of pressure on our toes, on the front foot at the start of our toe side turn. Now that we're on our toes, we're going to shift back to our back foot, the toes of our back foot. Then we're going to move on to the heels, so on and so forth. You explain it. And then you say at the end, well, this is going to help you get more grip at the end of the turn. Well, as soon as you kind of cover it too late, sometimes people forget how they have to do it. And also, they might not understand really the use behind it because you just kind of threw it in there at the very end. So I'd say give it a shot, play around with it, and once you get good, you'll notice you can take time to cover the why before a sequence of exercise with a common goal and just highlight it quickly from time to time without talking too much. Worst comes to worst, this whole discussion has gotten you thinking so much about the why that if you try to include it in the beginning of the explanation and forget it, you're still very likely going to include it later because you gave it a more central role. Let me know if you get more buy-in and a more heightened attention level. Hopefully more lesson requests will flow your way. Thank you very much.